So let me give a proper intro for Dr. Backman. She's really amazing, as we all know. Does amazing past life regressions, between life soul regressions, spiritual mentoring, and I can definitely attest to those. She studied under Dr. Michael Newton and has been featured on many radio shows, has written many amazing books, some of which I have right here on my table. But I'll let her tell you more about herself and have you guide us into the topic for today.
Perfect. Okay. Well, good to be with all of you. And, we're going to go into a topic which, and you probably would suspect this, Jamie. It's like, all right, well, this can morph if it needs to morph. So the topic that Jamie and I talked about that I'm going to share with all of you is about what I might call high councils. And I'll define that so you guys know what I'm talking about. So, let me just define council, high council. What does that mean? The term council first relates to all of us. And what that means is for each of us as a soul, we have a team, a panel, a support system, a council, you call it that, of teachers, guides that serve to support us. Their job is to be in support of us, to be almost like our backboard, to be there for us. What Jamie and I talked about that I would share with all of you is not so much what's my counsel and Jamie's counsel, and for each of you, your counsels, but what are high counsels, okay? And through the regression work that I've done over the years, I've come to understand that as a soul, we are, you could say, designed to incarnate in three potential places. And when we're designed that way, I like to call it soul origin. You might be created as a soul to incarnate mostly on Earth or not, mostly not on Earth. And then there's two possibilities. And you may be a soul that typically comes from somewhere else in the spiritual realm that I like to call interplanetary, which means somewhere in the cosmos, somewhere in the celestial realm. That might be a planet, a star system, an interdimensional space. You actually may even, a spaceship, a spacecraft might be the sort of location where you operate. And then, of course, there's a third category, and that's a soul that comes from the angelic realm. So what I want to talk about are the coordinating councils that relate to Earth, that relate to interplanetary souls, and that relate to angelic realm souls. Okay? So the Earth, and think about, it's almost like we have to think about the higher realm as almost like we could map it. So just kind of trying to put some context to it, let's just, think about the atmosphere. And over here in, one place, if you will, in the atmosphere, is the energetic higher frequency that relates to where Earth-based souls are coordinated. Okay. And I know this sounds really left-brained, but in many ways, to a degree, it's left-brained. So if you happen to be an Earth-based soul, and I know that probably most of the people, Jamie, that are drawn into your programs and your work are probably not Earth-based souls. But if you're an Earth-based soul, and I happen to be an Earth-based soul, my soul self, my higher self, resides like over here, if you will, tied to the frequency of Earth's spiritual realm. And in the spiritual realm tied to Earth, there is a quote unquote high council. Call it a parliament, call it a Congress, call it a coordinating body. It's made up of approximately 130 experienced Earth-based souls who, believe it or not, and I know this sounds very human, but who come together as guides to try to figure out how to guide the Earth-based souls that they guide. So again, you can call it the words Congress, Parliament, Council. Think of any kind of word. I always hate to liken it to, we think about our government in the United States, our government in Washington, the Congress, because they don't always function so well together, as we all know. But it's like a Congress. So then the next question you might ask me, and we'll get to IP Council, Interplanetary Council, Angelic Realm Council. But the question you might ask me is, well, so how are these souls determined? How is it figured out? It's like if you vote for a senator or a member of the House of Representatives from your district, that person goes to Washington, D.C. I'm kind of assuming everybody's an American. That person goes to Washington, D.C. and seemingly, and don't get me into politics or you'll hear all my gripes and complaints and frustrations and all that. So the higher self of advanced earth-based souls are, you might say, selected by a team of advanced earth-based souls, and they're almost like tapped. They're almost like requested to come and join this council. So the high, and we'll come to IP and AR, but just so you understand the Earth-based Council. The Earth-based Council are approximately, like I've said, 130 or so souls. Some are still incarnating. So if you happen to be an Earth-based soul, and I don't think unevolved souls get drawn into Jamie's courses any more than they get drawn into my work, your soul, your higher self, may serve on a high council. It's a big job. It's a stressful job. Think about any governmental leader that you respect and forget the ones you don't respect, because there are lots of ones that are, to me, don't act very evolved. But think about a leader you respect. That leader is acting of service, is operating from their soul intentions, and is being of service to be a member of the council. Now, and some of this may surprise you, council members don't always agree with each other. Actually, right now, and we don't need to go too far down this road, but it's a road I pay a lot of attention to right now, with all of the incredible trauma that's going on in Europe tied to the invasion of the country of Ukraine. The guides up there, and let's just speak about earth-based souls still, the guides up there have to figure out how to guide humans to do something about it, because the guides have no power. They don't come down here and tinker with what happens, okay? So simplistically, but there is this Congress of sorts in the higher realm made up of highly advanced earth-based souls. Now I can hear my guides in my head, so they want me to say a little bit more about that. Some of these souls on this council, if you study what we call ascended masters, some of the souls on the earth-based council, earth-based high council, may be nameable ascended masters that you think about, like Master Saint Germain, the soul of Mother Mary, who, when you think about like the soul of Mother Mary, please take that out of a religious context and put it into an advanced soul context. Okay? Okay, so these different thoughts keep popping into my mind. There are some very old meaning evolved, old earth-based souls that serve on the Earth High Council. Okay? One of those, and anytime I bring up an identifying name, and if it happens to go back into biblical times, please don't put this into religious context. You can think about it that way, but that's not where I'm coming from. So there's a very old soul that's been around a long time who keeps incarnating who in current times continues to incarnate. And, you might wonder, well, so how do I know this? I know this primarily through regression. And then at times I check out some of this information with a couple of people that I know personally who, in my opinion, are capable channels. The soul of the one we know as Moses from the Old Testament. That is a very evolved soul. Again, it has nothing to do with religion. That is a very evolved soul that's been coming into body. Let me add one more quick thing. That's a very old earth-based evolved soul that's been coming into body over and over and over for a long, long period of time. That soul continues to incarnate. So sometimes in regression work, I discover, well, so who is the Moses soul that is in body today? Okay. So historically, just going back for a minute, the one we know as Gandhi, the soul of Gandhi is the soul of Moses. What did Gandhi teach? Gandhi taught nonviolence. That's what Moses taught, nonviolence. So that soul keeps coming into body, and that particular soul that has a role on the Earth High Council, that's why I'm bringing it up, has a number of current incarnations. And one of them, and some of you may pay no attention to the news, and some of you may pay some attention to the news, Senator Cory Booker, one of the senators from the state of Massachusetts, an African-American man, is the soul of Moses. Okay? He was very prominent in the news. He was speaking up for and supporting the nominee for the Supreme Court, a highly capable African-American woman, probably, many would say, if you look at her credentials, probably among the most capable nominees or members of the current or members of the Supreme Court. And Cory Booker was just passionate about supporting her. He's an aspect of the soul of Moses. And the soul of Moses has a responsibility to the earth-based high council. So now what do I mean by aspect? Because I think this is an important piece as well. So if I can describe this, if I had a board, I'd draw it. But so let's just say in this circle of energy is the totality of a soul. Okay? When any soul incarnates, including all of us, we bring a slice of this pie, if you will, that causes us to be alive in our bodies. That slice of the totality of this soul also connects with a slice of the soul, of their own soul, we call higher self. So in using Cory Booker, Senator Cory Booker as an example, he's an aspect means slice. That's how I'm using that word. He's a part of the greater soul that we would think of as Moses. Okay? So if you meet someone and they tell you they're the incarnation of the soul of, let's just say, Jesus, just to use as an example, if they're saying that, and it depends on how well you know them, if it feels ego-based, okay, they are probably not that soul. Let me say one quick thing. In the world of psychology, we talk about, and you guys know, somewhere way back when, a long time ago, I'm a psychologist. I was once a conventional psychologist, which I haven't been for a long time. But in the world of psychology, we talk about ego and ego strength. Okay? Ego, if I use that word, I mean, it's a me, focus on me, I'm so capable, blah, 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 perspective. But in psychology, when we talk about ego strength, that means I'm grounded, I have decent self-esteem. I'm committed to the work that I do, or I'm committed to my family, or committed to my neighborhood, or whatever it might be. So the word ego is confusing. And when I use ego, I mean very much a kind of a self-serving attitude. And yet ego strength, if you think about anybody you respect, male, female, political, whoever it might be, if you respect them and they feel solid to you, that's what I call ego strength. So you might come upon someone who says, I am an aspect or a portion or, the incarnation of some well-known figure in history. They might be. On the other hand, they may simply have a relationship at the soul level. They may have spent past lives, with an accomplished soul. They may have known, like sometimes I'll work with clients, they knew, and Jesus is a complicated topic, which if we have time, we can talk more about, but they may have been alive during the time of Jesus and they knew that person well, but they aren't Jesus. All right, now let me talk about interplanetary souls, and then we'll get to angelic realm souls. But I want to talk about those two high councils, because each of these, I like to call it soul origin or type. Each of these types of souls has a separate council. So if you're an interplanetary soul, and it doesn't matter whether if you are or not, I work with people both in classes and regressions to figure that out. Interplanetary soul, obviously a soul that primarily does not incarnate on Earth, primarily comes from somewhere in the spiritual realm that is, as we've already talked about. So a soul that comes from a planet, a star system, even a non-dense location that is interplanetary. And I'm sure you guys have talked about that in this Starseed Ascension group. There is an interplanetary high council. That interplanetary high council, the notion of, just to use it as an example, the notion of the U.S. House of Representatives is a perfect example. And let me put this context around all of this too, and hopefully this will help everybody understand. The Earth-based High Council is the older of these three councils we're talking about. It's been around probably 2,000-3,000 years. The Interplanetary High Council has been around probably 50 to 75, maybe 50 to 75 years. It is rather small, about 30 to 40 souls, and it's made up of representatives from Earth and other celestial locations. And if you said what celestial locations, I would just, and here's where it gets confusing, because we often want to know, if we're an interplanetary soul, where do we come from? Now, that can be learned in various ways. Regression's one of the ways. But some of the places where, and I'm going to say your souls, because I bet a lot of you, if not all of you, are star seeds or interplanetary souls. Your soul home location might be a nameable location, and it might be a location that the name is meaningless to us. But nonetheless, the IP High Council has about 30 to 40 souls from Earth and from other locations in the universe, and primarily other locations within the solar system that contains Earth. So what is their purpose? The purpose of the Interplanetary Council is to aid Earth, is to aid humanity, is to help make decisions and guide souls on Earth to advance our human culture. And so some of you may serve on that council. Some of your souls, your higher selves, might serve on the IP High Council. It's about a third Earth-based souls or maybe 40% Earth-based souls, and the rest interplanetary souls that do what they can to work together, to make agreements. They don't always agree, to make agreements to aid Earth by guiding souls on Earth. Now, I realize one thing I didn't say is these councils, the council members don't always agree, but it's respectful. It does not look like some of the, junk that goes on in our American politics, and, not just American politics, in other countries too. But if there's a disagreement between council members, it's a respectful disagreement and not a denigrating of someone's character. Okay. Lastly, there's an angelic realm council. Souls from the angelic realm are different from earth-based souls, different from interplanetary souls. They are souls that often don't incarnate at all. And when they incarnate, they come to Earth because angelic realm souls serve the divine. And when I say divine, again, I'm not talking necessarily in a religious context. I'm talking about a high frequency of guidance that we could call God, the source, Great Spirit, the Tao, whatever you want to call it. The angelic realm serves the divine. The newest council is a very small council, probably has existed for 15 to 20 years, made up of archangels, the souls of archangels, and the souls of other advanced angelic realm souls that may not necessarily be archangels. Archangels just simply being the kind of upper level. If this is the totality of the angelic realm, at the upper level of the angelic realm, coordinating the angelic realm are the archangels. There are more than 4 archangels, even though you may often think about the classic 4, Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael. There are other archangels. The angelic realm, what's really unique about the angelic realm is the angelic realm is all about love and compassion. That's their job. That's their role. That's their energy. When they incarnate on Earth, if they happen to incarnate, because they don't often incarnate, they bring pure, caring, deep, compassionate energy. They have a council. Actually, their council, the angelic realm, what I call AR, angelic realm council, is coordinated by an advanced earth-based soul because the angelic realm serves the earth, serves humanity's needs to evolve. And they are probably, more than likely, the most kind to each other because of their energy. Yeah. So some of you, if not a lot of you, are probably angelic realm souls, or interplanetary souls. So this is kind of a rough gauge, which is not always easy, to give you some pointers. If you feel like it's always so hard to put words to this and to make it very concrete. If you feel like you operate fairly well, fairly well, as a human in the human body, like it's not like there aren't things about humanity that bug you, but you don't have a huge amount of health problems. You don't have a huge amount of allergies or a huge amount of physical challenges, or you can eat most foods. You don't struggle with a really narrow diet. If you feel like you operate relatively well in the human body, in the human culture, whatever relatively well means, you're probably earth-based. Okay. Operating as a human maybe somebody has told you you might be on the spectrum, or you have a lot of allergies, a lot of digestive issues, a lot of autoimmune issues. You might be an interplanetary soul. If you're an interplanetary soul, there's only one reason you're on Earth. And that is that you are a highly evolved soul. That doesn't mean you're not still evolving. That doesn't mean you're not still working on your own soul's evolution in your life. But if you're an interplanetary soul and you've come into body on Earth, you come to Earth to bring your wisdom, your perspective, your knowledge, your evolution, because you come from somewhere. I'm sure you've heard me say this. You come from somewhere in the spiritual realm that's highly evolved. That's not true of an earth-based soul. An earth-based soul evolves on Earth in body from young beginning stages of being a young soul. That's not how an interplanetary soul evolves. An interplanetary soul evolves somewhere in the universe, coming from an evolved culture, and you bring that wisdom here. Except you may feel kind of like an oddball. You may feel like, I just don't fit. Why do I see the world so much differently than most people see the world? And maybe, just to kind of bring this into conversation with you, Jamie, for a second, and answer this however you want to answer this, Jamie, was there a point in your life where you realized that you had to deal with feeling different than a lot of other people on Earth?
Oh my goodness. I think since 6 years old, probably.
Okay.
But all throughout my life, for sure. Yep. Always felt different, out of place, and definitely been told out by certain individuals that I've been on the spectrum. So I've had that comment made as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's partly why, I love, and I'll say why I'm saying this to you, Jamie, and to the group. I used to wonder years ago, when I started having this huge influx of interplanetary souls into my regression practice. Because as you've heard me say, I'm an earth-based soul. And at a certain point, when I started kind of thinking about the numbers of people that were coming for regression, and that 50 to 60% of my clients were interplanetary, then I said to my guides, what's the point? Why are you doing this? I'm not interplanetary. Why are you feeding? Spirit has this incredible orchestration process. And I end up working with the people that Spirit wants me to work with. So I said, why? I'm earth-based. Why are you bringing me all these IP souls? And they said, and Jamie, your comments trigger this for me. They said, because so many people that are IP don't understand why they feel so different, or why they feel like they just don't fit in. And we want you, Linda, not only to help them understand what's unique about them and what their gifts are, but to help them embrace themselves and stop mislabeling themselves as weird, odd, don't fit, and that sort of thing. So it was like, oh, okay, well, now I get it. The same is true to a degree with angelic realm souls. But what angelic realm souls struggle with so much is this sense of why, if you think about the sort of the backbone energy, the upstanding signature energy of an angelic soul is this approach to life that's tied to pure love and compassion. Now, and just to kind of put that into context, it's not that I don't have a certain amount of loving, compassionate energy, but that's not how I approach life in general. Angelic realm souls are, I wish I could bring one in beside me and get that he or she to talk to you guys. And I'll say in a minute, I'll say something about he versus she, which you might find interesting, but they are just kind, caring, and don't understand why the amount of conflict, misbehavior, rudeness, defaming people, why that exists. Okay. Angelic, just since I'm jabbering about it, angelic realm souls are usually souls in female bodies. And I find all these things just fascinating. I have worked with men who are angelic realm souls. I have regressed men who are angelic realm souls. Most of the time, those men happen to be gay. And that's the way they more comfortably bring forward their love and compassion energy, is because they're gay men. And I know some of this maybe sounds overly stereotyped, but yeah. So any of you who look at life and wonder, why are people so rude? Why does so much non-loving, non-compassionate energy exist on Earth? You may well be an angelic realm soul. An angelic soul feels things so deeply. Like you lead with your heart. You lead with that aspect of yourself. Humanity doesn't have it figured out, as I'm sure we all know. Humanity, that's why all of us are in body at this time. Those of us that are spiritually oriented and people that take Jamie's courses and do things with me and that sort of thing, we agreed to come here to be of service. It's not easy because humanity has certainly never reached a place of greater unity. We're trying our darndest to work on that. So probably most of you, if not all of you, are totally aware of what's going on in Europe, where you have this bully of a country and bully of a leader, the leader of Russia, who is using free will action to try to hold down freedom of people, to try to hold down democracy, but hold down a country that became a free country 30 years ago. And obviously, the leader of Russia wants to take it back to the time where communism and despots and dictators told people how to live. What we're looking at, and I hope this doesn't feel like me going off on a tangent. You will feel my passion about this. The dark versus the light exists as an issue. It exists on Earth. It exists in the higher realm. And the only way dark versus light can be dealt with on Earth is through human, healthy, free will behavior, rather than human, unhealthy free will behavior is what we see with the leader of Russia. He's using his own wounding, and sometimes I say, oh, I shouldn't say all these things. He's an ego-based person who wants to go back to the era of control. So you're seeing the dark versus the light play out in one of the most classic ways and painful and horrendous ways we've ever seen. It's our job as advanced souls to live our lives in as healthy a way as we can, even if those are just simple things like being a good friend to somebody or helping your neighbor. It doesn't have to be some magnanimous kind of thing, or it can be. So when your emotional sensitivities are really, really deep and strong, one, that usually means you're an experienced soul. And when they're really, really deep and strong, it may also mean you're an angelic soul. And at times, angelic souls can't watch the news day in and day out. It's too heavy. All you need to do, in my opinion, is hold your light, hold your center, be who you are. There are other people that are fighting to get this solved. I will just say briefly that the leader of Ukraine, the president of Ukraine, that has surprised so many people, is a highly advanced earth-based soul who's been incarnating on earth for a very long time. And he is a light bearer. So if you're an earth-based soul, you will always be an earth-based soul. If you're an IP, that does not shift. That's almost like if you're tall, you'll always be tall. So your soul type or your soul origin doesn't change. But so as you probably know, when we get ready at the soul level, when we prepare to be born, we plan all kinds of aspects of our life, including our astrological chart. And so we come in with, it's purposeful that we have a sun sign, a moon sign, a rising sign, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just a minimally an armchair astrologer. I know lots of people that are very capable professional astrologers. I'm a Sagittarius sun. Somebody once who did my chart said, it's a wonder I can manage the energy that I have, but it seems to work for me. So I'm a Sagittarius sun. I am a Sagittarius rising. I'm an Aries moon. And I believe it's my North Node is Virgo. Here's a common indication of being interplanetary. Throughout your life, and especially when you were younger, were you interested, were you interested in the sky, interested in the stars, interested in astrology, sci-fi, planets? So often when I guide a regression, I do a pretty lengthy interview with the client first. And I'm gathering all kinds of information, but I'm not sharing any of my hunches. But because I've done so much regression over the years, I start getting these hits in my head before I ever guide the regression. I zip it up until the regression's over. I want the content to come forward without Linda said she thought this and Linda said she thought that. But almost always when I work with an interplanetary soul, and we learn that in the regression, they will say something to me about even being a very young child that loved to stare out the window at night, that the night sky was their favorite thing, and that they were just so drawn either to understanding astrology or sci-fi, and that was just a passion for them.
All right. So when we have like our main soul, right?
Yeah.
Now our main soul is also like in this thing. This is like our higher consciousness, which is like attached to like the big guy, like the whole big thing, right? Mm-hmm. So this part is part of this part that comes down to be part of this part, right? This little dude, right?
I think basically, yes.
Yes. Okay, that's very, very layman terms. But now when our soul, I guess how we like, not fractures, but like how we send part of that off to be into multiple people at the same time, and can be in different parts of history occurring all at the same time because time doesn't exist. I've found that when I'm going into Akash for people, like their past lives are sometimes happening congruently with this lifetime. Does that make sense?
So that's
like they are like, they can be a little girl in a China rice field at the same time, like in like 300 AD, in the same time as being here. Is that because time doesn't exist? I'm like, my brain goes every time I have to.
I understand what you're asking. Our soul evolves in real time. So all time is not happening at once. And a lot of people teach that. It is my understanding from years of regression that is not true. That, Linda's life in 943 AD or CE happened in 943 AD. And Linda's life in 2022, that time is linear and not all happening at once, because we evolve as a soul. So if we think all time is, happening now, that's not how we evolve. In my humble opinion, it's completely inaccurate.
So if it's linear, can there be parallels? Do you know what I'm saying?
And what do you mean by parallel? So
like parallel universes that are happening at the same time, but are on a different timeline, and do our souls fracture in those areas as well?
I think the easiest answer to that is yes.
Okay, so that would explain the jumping. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense now.
Yeah. Okay, good. Good question.
I was wondering, so you were talking about the interplanetary high council, and there's only about 30 evolved souls that are on that council, and I'm not completely connected to my guides or hearing them clearly as much as I'd like, but how do we, obviously I'm living my life to better my evolution and hope to inspire and have that ripple effect to other people, but with the higher council, are we trying to receive their messages, or just focus on our higher self, or we'll potentially get that connection to that higher realm council as an interplanetary soul, or do we connect to the earth, the earth-based soul council?
That's a great question. I think I understand what you're asking. So no matter what our soul type is, all of us have at least a guide that guides us directly. And if we're a highly evolved soul, one of those guides might be our own soul, our own higher self, because our own higher self is so evolved. So when you tune in and use your intuition, and learning to trust intuition takes time, and trust is a key. But when you're looking for guidance, think about tuning in to not a high council, because most of us aren't guided by a high council. Most of us are guided by a guide that may have a connection to the high council. So just think about, you have a personal guide. And even if you don't get an image, or you get a color, or a particular song triggers it, trust you can connect to your own guide, and that guide may have nothing to do with the high council. Does that answer your question or not?
Yeah. But are we trying to, the higher council, what is their role then to us? They're just the high council that's kind of looking over all of the souls on earth, and just kind of these people over here are not following the, I don't know.
I get what you're saying. It's a little bit of a step down. So if you're an interplanetary soul, as an example, the high council is working to make wise decisions as to how to help Earth with various issues on Earth. It could be global warming. It could be anything going on Earth. The high council, let's just say the 30 souls of the interplanetary council, they then guide, souls maybe a step lower, less evolved, and one of those souls may be your guide. So it's almost like a step down. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yeah,
It's
go
kind of a
ahead.
silly one, but I'm just curious as I'm like looking at my notes. How did you find out, I guess, like for each of the high councils, when you said how many are in that, how did you come to these numbers?
Through regression work with clients.
Okay.
Through guiding clients into altered state, or just into, altered state just really means a relaxed place where the client, that's what regression is, where the client is able to access their guide, and clients learn about themselves and begin to talk to me. I've done this kind of work for, I don't know, 27 years or something like that. And so if a client starts talking to me about their guide, and they may talk to me about their guide's connection to the higher council, then I start asking questions. Could your guide tell us more about the council? What's the purpose of the council? How big is it? And I'll just add, because this popped into my mind as other of you was asking questions. The members of any of these councils are not permanent. It's just like the US government in the sense that council members cycle off and new ones are added on. But through repetitive, numerous client regression sessions, primarily is where this has come from.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So I was just wondering about like the process of a soul regression. And so that's one question. And then just like, you said 27 years, is that what you said? So I was just curious to see like what led you to this work.
Okay. Let's see. Let me try to answer that without taking a huge long time. Let me just explain a regression, and then I'll tell you briefly how I got into this kind of work. So a regression basically is me getting to know you, asking a lot of questions about you, your life, your interests, blah, 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 and then guiding you. It's technically hypnosis. Hypnosis is simply relaxation. A lot of people misunderstand hypnosis. Guiding you into trance, into hypnosis. Guiding you, first step would be to discover a past life. Whatever past life comes forward is determined by your guide, is not determined by me. We go through a past life, whatever comes forward, scene by scene. The past life is always directly related to current life. We go to the end of the past life. We go to the death scene in the past life. And then in the regression, you follow that natural journey when you die or pass in the past life, when your soul energy leaves that past life body. And that aspect, that slice of your soul, elevates from 3D through fourth dimension to fifth dimension and above. And we connect at your soul level, and information comes forward from your guide. So that's a very simple and quick way to explain it. That's what regression is. What led me into this work is years ago, when I never thought I'd fall into this kind of work. So years ago, when I was a conventional psychologist, I had a very close colleague die in his early 30s from a type of lung cancer. I was in my middle 40s at the time. And when that happened, I started having spiritual experiences. He started talking to me from the other side. He began to show me past lives that we had shared. I wasn't even sure I believed in past lives when all this started happening. So I was sort of like just, thrown into a course, a program of learning of what is this? What is that? What's real? What's not? What does this mean? And I'll just say one more quick thing about it. This, I know, was planned at the soul level, but was surprising to me. So at that point, and so I've been married for a very long time to my life partner. He and I, when all this started happening, had probably been together for 20 or 25 years. we're very liberal people. We, for some unknown reason, had never spoken about soul, regression, past lives. So my colleague started talking to me from the other side. I thought that was fascinatingly, but weird, like crazy weird, but fascinating. And so my husband, who had known my colleague actually quite well, they'd have lunch and play golf together at times. I told my husband what was going on. I thought he would just look at me like I had, 6 heads. And on this day, now it's 28, 29 years ago, he looked back at me calmly and I said, "You don't think this is strange, do you?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Why not?" And he said, "Well, here's what I think is the reason." He said, "Only now do I remember," because he'd blocked this all out of his memory. "Only now do I remember," my husband said, "that when I was a boy, I remembered my past lives in detail." He said, "In my own private time and space, I knew I had past lives. I learned about them intuitively, and I pushed it all aside because I thought nobody would believe me." And so my husband said to me, "Go for it. If you want to learn about this or do something with this, go for it." That was an incredible blessing for me because I was very nervous as a psychologist to think about falling into this work. So that's what happened.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, so if you guys, if you're looking for me, and Jamie may have shared this, just go to my website, ravenheartcenter.com, ravenheartcenter.com. That's where you can find me. You can find information about regression. I teach virtual courses and that sort of thing, but there's a lot of videos and podcasts and things you can go listen to. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
It is my total pleasure. Yeah. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we appreciate you and your time.
Yeah.
So I'm sure everyone has like 100 million more questions, but we'll save that for the next round.
All right. That sounds perfect. Well, great to be with all of you. Keep trusting you're here with purpose. You're here in body with purpose.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody.
You too.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jamie. Be well, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.